أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. For dear marhum Sayyid Irfan Husseini, who passed away last week, a few weeks ago, please recite a Surah Al-Fatiha with a Qul Huwa Allahu Ahad for him. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa There will be a majlis for him Saturday night at IECOC, inshallah. It is the month of Sha'ban, we are ending, and as mentioned, either Sunday night or Monday night, the moon will be seen for the coming of Shahr Ramadan. And as we are preparing and finishing up these last nights of the month of Sha'ban, we need to pay attention to a few things before the holy month of Ramadan enters. One is that the holy month of Ramadan is a month of fasting, worship, ibadat, but also true ibadat and true tawheed and monotheism comes to us through wilayat of Ahlul Bayt. And we have to go through wilayat in order to gain true tawheed. Or else our worship can be like the worship of shaitan. Because shaitan's worship was the worship without the wali of God, without the hujjat of God. He didn't want to pay attention, or he didn't want to respect Prophet Adam. So therefore his worship became nothing. So these few nights that we are preparing for Shahr Ramadan to enter, I'd like to continue with the topic of Mahdawiyat or Mahdism. Because Mahdawiyat is, we said, in order for a person to gain kamal and perfection and to become a true muwahhid, and if for a person to really benefit in Shahr Ramadan, he has to become closer and closer and closer to the Imam of the age. Because the Imam has hudur, the Imam has presence. He does not have dhuhur, he's not apparent in front of us, but he is present here. And the more you learn about him, the more you love him, the more you connect to him, the more complete your faith will be. One of the du'as we read in Shahr Ramadan is Dua al-Iftitah, brought to us by the Imam of the age. Look at the narrators, the second deputy of the Imam, narrated from him, from the Imam of the age. 2, the night of Qadr, the holiest part, which is the heart of Shahr Ramadan, is that night that we have Tanazzalul Malaika wa Ruh fiha. So we have that the angels, all the angels, they are revealed, they descend on where? On the heart of the Imam of the age. So Shahr Ramadan is also a month to remember Imam al-Zaman. And we said that our duty is to feel this urgency that we have to call for our Savior. We have to connect to our Savior. Even if you remember him a little bit throughout the day, you just think of him a little bit. That is a very good action. If you say salam to him, even better. If you do a salawat to him, for him, even better. But you have to admit that many of us are ghafil and neglectful of the Imam of the age. In this topic of Mahdawiyat, once we went over and we had discussions on Mahdism. It was a 4-volume book. I think it lasted for 60 lessons. There are a lot of lessons. It's very lengthy. It's rich in hadith, rich in verses of Quran. And it is a topic that we need to study more, I believe. There are a few verses of Quran that tonight I want to talk about Imam Mahdi in the Holy Quran. One is the verse of Baqiyatullah khayrun lakum in kuntum mu'minin. Surah Al-Hud, verse 86. What remains of God's provision is better for you should you be faithful. The book that I'll be using tonight is a book from one of the students of Ayatollah Sistani by the name of Ayatollah Sayyid Munir Abbas. He has a book about Imam Mahdi, English, and he discusses this verse. And he mentions that, for example, Allama Tabatabai, when it comes to this verse about Baqiyatullah khayrun lakum, he mentioned that this is about the Prophet Shu'aib, and that they were not dutiful when it came to measuring and weighing their goods. So if you have, for example, halal or correct way to measure and sell and do business, this baqiyatullah khayrun lakum is better for you. But here Sayyid Munir Abbas says, for me, when I see this verse, this part, in kuntum mu'mineen, if you are believers, he says for me that this verse refers to the Imam of the age, to Imam Zaman. And that he mentions that there's hadith, that they came to Imam Sadiq alayhi salam and asked him, when you see Imam Mahdi, should you address him? How should you address him? Should you call Imam Mahdi Amir al-Mu'mineen, the commander of the faithful? Should you call him that? In the hadith, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, no. That is a name given by God to the commander of the faithful, Ali alayhi salam. No one was called it before him, nor does anyone claim it after him other than he is a disbeliever, a kafir. Then the man asked, how should I greet the Imam of the age? And in the tradition says, peace be upon you, Baqiyatullah. Peace be upon you, Baqiyatullah, or remainder of Allah. So this title, and Sayyid Munir Abbas uses this verse and says the way that you understand the Holy Quran is from the hadith. The hadith is explaining to you and giving bayan and explanation of the Quran. I remember once when we were going over in the Hawza, one of the verses about not being able to touch the Quran except the mutahharun, for example, those that are purified in Surah Al-Waqa'ah. Our teacher, who's mujtahid, he was explaining that this verse refers to the Islamic law that you cannot touch the Quran physically if you don't have wudu, if you don't have tahara. So this is Islamic law. But also some derive that touching the Quran means understanding the Quran. And that only the Ahlul Bayt are tahir, the Prophet and his family are the only ones that are tahir in 33:33. Therefore, they are the only ones that can touch and understand the Quran. So he said this way, he says, don't tie the hands of God. Obviously, God does not have hands. He says, don't tie the hands of God. A verse can refer to an Islamic law, but in its deeper form or in another meaning can also refer to the fact that Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam can understand the Quran. So the same thing about Baqiyatullah maybe can be said that yes, in context, talking about, say, the story of Prophet Shu'aib, how Allama Tabatabai, he is doing tafsir of the zahir of the Quran. But the reality and the batin of the Quran, or the ta'weel of this verse, is about the Imam of the age. And both of them, you can say maybe that they're both allowed to say this. It refers to both. So that is one verse about Imam Mahdi. There's about 100 verses like this throughout the Quran that talk about the Imam of the age. And how do we understand? From the hadith. Let me give you another verse. 2762. I'm sure that many of you have recited this verse, and probably in the center they recite it. أَمَّنْ يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَا وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ وَيَجْعَلُكُمْ خُلَفَاءَ الْأَرْضِ. Is he who answers the call of the distressed, when he invokes him and removes his distress and makes you successors on the earth? Again, Sayyid Munir Khabbaz goes through this and says that Allama here, Tabatawi says that this Muthtar is who? Is the person whose dua is answered. Allah is saying in this verse that He answers the dua, the prayers of a person that's distressed. And then He goes in other verses and uses verse by verse of tafsir. And says, for example, Ud'uni astajib lakum, call me, I will answer you. It says this verse is explaining Ud'uni astajib lakum, meaning call on me, I will answer you. Whose prayer will I answer? The Muthtar. Call on me, O Muthtar. That's one of the conditions, for example. And that is, then he opens it up and says, actually, when you look at it, that is the reality of dua. The reality of prayer is to be Muthtar. If a person hasn't really reached this state, and that he's distressed, for example, or that urgency, then he really is not doing dua. That dua that comes with that 100% certainty that Allah is listening to me, Allah is going to help me, nobody else can help me whatsoever, that dua is answered, which is the Muthtar, for example, distressed. That's again the zahir of the Quran. But then Sayyid Munir says, well look, let's actually dive into this. Then he gives his opinion. Again, Mujtahid, student of Ayatollah Tabrizi, student of Ayatollah Sistani. He says that, look, when you look at this verse, there's also وَيَجْعَلُكُمْ خُلَفَاءَ الْأَرْضِ afterwards. Meaning that it makes you successors of the earth. Who are the successors of the earth? The Imams. The Imams are the successors of the earth. Who's going to succeed and be the Khalifa of the earth? Imam Mahdi will be. Says that is one proof that this verse Muthtar here is referring to the Imam of the age, that he is distressed. Or when you look at the hadith, then he says, the hadith, open it up, and Imam Ali alayhi salam says that this verse was revealed about Imam Mahdi. I changed the name so we shouldn't stand up. When he emerges, he will wear a turban at the station, at the al-maqam. Which maqam? Maqam Ibrahim. He comes there. And he will beseech his Lord so that no banner, will be ever turned down, for example. That basically, that this verse came for the Imam of the age. 2, Imam Sadiq, another hadith. This verse was revealed for Imam Mahdi from the household of Prophet Muhammad, of Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Imam Sadiq in narration says, by God, he is the distressed. He is the Muthtar. So when you're saying this verse, Amman yujibul Muthtar, is actually your meaning is the Imam of the age. It's actually in a way by the barakat of the name of the Imam of the age that this verse that you're asking for help from God and you're asking for shifa or healing is because the true Muthtar is the Imam. And it says when he prays or if he prays two rakat at the station, Maqam Ibrahim, and supplicates to God, he will be answered. So this is about the dua of the Imam of the age is answered, who is the true Muthtar, and says all distress will be removed. Not only his distress, his faraj is actually our faraj as well, meaning all the removal of the grief, all that injustice, all that killing, all that genocide, all that starvation, all that lying and cheating, and the richer taking advantage of the poor, for example, the oppressors taking advantage of the oppressed, all of that will be gone, all that distress will be removed, and he will be made to inherit the earth. So again, you have a zahir, understanding of Quran, apparent meaning, and then you have a hadith that is explaining the batin. Possibly you could say both. That Muthtar is for that person that has iftirar maybe, and that the batin of the Quran refers to the Imam of the age. But it's important for us to know that when you say Amman yujibul Muthtar, that true distressed person is Imam Zaman, is the Imam of the age. And when you say Baqiyatullah in the Quran, that is also referring to the Imam of the age who will inherit the earth. So these are two verses about Imam Zaman In the Quran, we said there's about 100 of these inside the Quran. About almost 900, 1,000 hadith about the Imam of the age. Tonight's discussion is the similarity between Rasulullah and the Imam of the age. When you want to understand Imam Mahdi, and you want to, some ask, I want to love him more. I want to get to know him more. Well, one of those ways is to understand how his characteristics are. And sometimes when you look at some narrations, according to Ayatollah Sayyid Munir Abbas, you get a wrong image of Imam Mahdi. That some of us might take some narrations and they might be weak, or they might have other narrations that contradict, and you might have, God forbid, a wrong image of him. So we need to understand what is the similarity of the Imam of the age. Before I say this, I want to say one similarity because today was raining. Was it raining in Orange County as well? Okay. So I'm going to say this for the rain. Once I was with one of my friends in Masjid Jamkaran, he's a sheikh now, and he was explaining to me, one of the scholars gave an explanation that Imam Mahdi is like rain, and the comparison of Imam Mahdi and rain. When he said this, and it was in Masjid Jamkaran in Qom, it began to rain very heavily when he said this. And I joked to him, I said, this is not the place to say this hadith, it's raining. And it kept raining so much. When we came home, the street where I live was flooded. Water was about to get in my house. I asked them, please, next time be careful when you mention these narrations. So how is Imam Mahdi like the rain? So this is a very good comparison. When it rains, next time think of this. The first, what does rain do? Rain is for everyone. Rain is for everyone. It benefits everyone. Right tonight, there might be people that are committing haram, that are either eating haram food or intoxicants or haram. Did it rain for them or not? It did. Did it snow in the mountains or not? Yes. And that snow will be water for them. So the rahmat of God is for everyone. The Imam of the age benefit is also for everyone, just like the rain. Everyone will be benefited from Imam Mahdi. Whoever, if they're Muslim, non-Muslim, when there will be removal of injustice, when there will be fairness, everyone will benefit from that fairness. Two, when there is poverty will be removed. It doesn't matter if they're Muslim or not Muslim, atheist or not atheist, whatever religion, at that time they will benefit from the fact that there will be no more poor, no more poverty. So Imam Mahdi is for everyone. Yes, Khassan, he's for the Shia and followers of Ahlul Bayt. Yes, just like Allah's mercy when it rains, He'll give a special mercy and rain or barakat for individuals' life in a different way. Right? There's a specific rahmah. But generally, the rahmah, mercy of rain and benefit is for everyone, and so is the benefit of Imam of the age. Two, what does rain do? When you look at the desert, or a place that's been dry in California, we had droughts for many years. These last 2 years, now they're wondering if California is going to be a giant lake or not. It's, mashallah, raining so much. If, you know, the San Joaquin Valley used to be a giant lake, by the way. By the Sierra Madres, you know, west of it, used to be a giant lake. And used to exit from, you know, San Francisco Bay. So will California be, if it keeps raining like this, and I'm just joking, but atmospheric river or whatever, what does it do when you see everything now, when it rains a lot? It becomes green. There's life. It gives life to land that has been dead. Imam Mahdi, in the same way, he will give life to people. Just how rain and water gives life, the tradition has, the ta'at of Allah, obedience of God, gives life to the heart, how water gives life to everything. So Imam Mahdi is similar to the rain, because as rain gives life to everything around it, the Imam, which is that fresh spring of water, gives life to everything and gives the reality of Tawheed and makes people wake up and causes people to be able to truly worship Allah. 3, rain is mutahhir. Rain does tathir. When you look at the books of fiqh, you talk about rainwater. It has the same ruling as, for example, jari water or water that is running water. It's not like qalil water. If it's raining and there's a little pool of water, it's not qalil or limited water where it can become najis. It doesn't. Unless its smell changes, its taste changes, or its color changes. But even a puddle of water, as long as it's raining, it makes everything tahir. Take a carpet out and leave it outside, it's raining, and then it dries, it comes out, it's tahir. So the Imam of the age in the same way is mutahhir. He purifies everything. And if you want your hearts to be purified, if you want your actions to be purified, if you want your life to be purified from khaba'ith, in sin, in ugly acts, then remember the Imam of the age. He will cleanse you. Now let's go to the comparisons to Rasulullah. That was the comparison of Imam of the age to rain. How is Imam Mahdi similar to Rasulullah? Sayyid Munir Abbas brings different narrations and says that unfortunately, some people that look at these hadith have a wrong image of Imam Mahdi. I'm going to go through some of these narrations that he rejects and he says are weak or they're contradicted. And he says that this is not the appropriate image of Imam Mahdi that we should have. Hadith number 1. From Imam Bagha alayhi salam. If people only knew that Al-Mahdi, I changed the name, would do. If people only know what he would do. Once he emerges, most people would wish they did not see him due to how many people he would kill. It's the hadith. So most people wish they did not see Imam Mahdi because he's going to kill so many people. Surely he will not start with anyone other than Quraysh. He will not take anything from it but the sword, and he will not give it anything but the sword. This will be until many will say, this man is not from the progeny of Muhammad. If he were from the progeny of Muhammad, he would have had mercy. So hadith number 1 that he brings, that all he brings is the sword, and people wish that he would never emerge. Most people wish he'd never emerge. Source brings Ghaibatu Nu'mani. Again, he says later on, he says that the first narration is weak, the sanad, the train of attribution is weak, and the sanad is Muhammad ibn Ali al-Kufi, and he continues and says this is a weak hadith. But this is an image that maybe some of us have, to some extent. There's going to be lots of brutality during that time, that he's not going to give anyone a chance, that immediately, right when he does duhur, that's it, it's over. Everyone's who's bad is done for. The second hadith from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam and Bihar. Ali ibn Abi Talib said, according to this hadith, I was authorized to kill the fleeing and to finish off the wounded. I was authorized. If someone is running away from battle, I had permission. I could kill him if I wanted to. Yet I refrained from engaging in this for the sake of my companions. So if they were wounded, they would not finish them off. So I did not finish people off. But the Mahdi, I changed the word, has the authority to kill the fleeing enemy and to finish off the wounded. So when people are running away, he will kill them. Third, may my father be sacrificed for the son of the best of maids. Imam Ali alayhi salam narration. He will make them taste humiliation and pour them a bitter drink. He will not give them anything but the sword in the time of chaos. So he goes through these narrations and goes and says that these are weak. This is, again, I don't have the authority to say narrations are weak or not. This is Ayatollah Sayyid Munir Abbas, one of the great teachers of Kharij right now, who in Qom, in Arabic speaking, originally he's from Saudi Arabia, and he's a great student of Ayatollah Tabrizi, Ayatollah Sistani, and now moved to Najaf, I believe, and he's very famous. Many people here have read his articles, or has listened, or read his books, or listened to his speeches. So he says that these narrations are made up. One, they're weak. Two, he says they have contradictions, mu'arid. What are they contradicted with? He says, look at the narrations that we have on the other hand. of the mercy of Imam Zaman. And this was the problem that I first wanted to address, is that how can we as followers of Ali Muhammad believe in a savior, believe in a successor of Rasulullah that is compassionate? My question to you is this. My question to you is this. Can you turn up the volume a little bit? Yeah. Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. We'll turn up the volume. They turn up the volume, we'll turn up the volume. Yeah, full blast. Just kidding. No, I'm just, okay, no, that's fine. Okay, now if they do it more, then you turn it up more. Okay. It's a spider right here walking here, okay. He's listening too, so he's interested. Inshallah, he doesn't do anything. So, Imam Mahdi is, Ajallah Ta'ala Farajah Sharif, is the successor of Rasulullah. So the way that we imagine our Rasul, our Prophet, who is Rahmatun lil Alameen, we have to imagine Imam Mahdi the same way. Because or else he wouldn't be his successor. He wouldn't be from his progeny. And when you look at the life of Rasulullah, how many times or in different narrations did Jibreel come, for example, and say, give me authority, give me permission to bring this bala and curse on the people? The Prophet would refrain from cursing his own people. Even though for 13 years in Mecca, they gave him a very difficult time. And we see in the Quran that he has khuluqan azim, great characteristic. We see in the Quran that if he was harsh with the people, they would run away from him. And that his success was with his akhlaq, his knowledge, his sincerity, and his behavior. So the same way that we see that the successor of the Prophet is his successor must also inherit those attributes. It cannot be in a completely different way. Two, generally speaking, Rasulullah was successful by the people. He had help from the angels. He had help from the unseen. But it wasn't just miraculous power that caused Rasulullah to be successful. 13 years he struggled in Mecca. There's no, for example, dua that would wipe everyone out that he did. He allowed people themselves to learn about Islam, to become Muslims by themselves through education, through the Prophet's characteristics, and then they became Muslim. In the same way, Sayyid Abbas says, that is the way that Imam Mahdi will be. That people will come and he will give them a chance. And that at the end, voluntarily they will follow him. There will be help from the unseen, of course. But most of it is from the people. Most of his victory is from the people and the will of the people. So let's go through those narrations that are on the opposite side that show the compassion of the Imam. Who is one of the worst enemies of the Imam? Who can tell me? The end of times, who is the worst enemy? Sufyani. We have narrations that 5 signs are mahtum, 5 signs must happen. One of them is khuruj Sufyani. Either he really is, for example, the descendants of Abu Sufyan, or he has that ideology that they have hatred of Ali Muhammad and he kills and murders the followers of Ali Muhammad. At that time, the hadith has that Imam Mahdi asks and says, bring my cousin. Let me read the narration so it's more accurate. Bring my cousin, I want to talk to him. And you imagine that this is his worst enemy. Imam Ali alayhi salam is narrated to have said in hadith, Imam Mahdi will march with 12,000 at least, or 15,000 at most. They would chant, die, die, until they come to meet as-Sufyani. Imam Mahdi would say, bring forth my cousin so I can talk to him. And Sufyani would come forth and talk to the Imam, And then he would submit to the Imam and pledge allegiance to him. So he even gives, in this narration, Sufyani a chance and begins to talk some sense into him. And at that time, he listens. Then when Sufyani returns back to his camp, here it says a dog, or whoever it is, a dog should shame him. He said, what did you do? How did you give allegiance? And then he breaks his allegiance after that. And they fight, obviously. So we see tradition number one is that he gives Sufyani, his worst enemies, a chance before battle. It is not how the others' traditions or that image, that false image that might occur in our minds, that he immediately comes and starts to exterminate everyone and just remove them. He even gives Sufyani a chance. Two, we have traditions that he will call the rabbis, the priests and scholars of Judaism and Christianity, and that he will debate with the Torah on the Torah and in the Bible. That he will come to the scholars who already know, for example, they might know some of them, the truth, but still he will give them a chance and will debate with them and ask for their interpretation and show them the fabrications that befell their books. So we see that the way of Imam Mahdi, that maybe we haven't heard this as much, his methodology is through education, educating people, is through causing them to wake up and re-educating them. The third are the narrations that Imam Mahdi has. This narration, I'll say, that he mentions that the prime enemy of Imam Mahdi will be those that have hatred against Ali Muhammad. And it says about them, there will be people that will be worshipping a lot. They'll be worshipping heavily. But they'll say to the Imam, the narration says, their foreheads will be blistered due to long prostrations. Their clothes will be rolled as if they're ready to commence work. They would be overtaken by hypocrisy. These are the enemies of the Imam. And they will say, "Oh, son of Fatima, go back. We do not need you. Go back. We do not need you." Then it says that the Imam, narration says, that will approach the deviant party, advise them, and will give them 3 days. So even those enemies that hate the Imam and say, "Go back," he will give them 3 days. And after that, then the Imam will do what needs to be done. So the first quality and similarity that Imam Mahdi has with Rasulullah is the mercy and compassion. The second is that the Prophet also was determined and had resolution and was therefore committed to his message. And for Rasulullah to establish justice, he cannot say yes to everyone and everything. He was firm at the same time as being merciful. He had these two. He was qati'. He was firm, and also he was rahmatun lil alameen. The Imam will be in the same way. If he's, we agree at the successor of Rasulullah, he will be firm. When it comes to the law, when it comes to justice, when it comes to the Sharia, he will be firm. But when it comes to, for example, forgiveness, when it comes to giving people another chance, he will have mercy. The third similarity, because we've ran out of time, is that the Rasulullah did something that maybe in many other books of history we do not see, and that is the Muhajirin and those that migrated to Medina were welcomed warmly and became a part of the city of Medina. We live in a time where everyone wants to close the borders off. Nobody wants. Someone was joking and says, whenever an immigrant comes in here, finally, now they said, now let's close the borders. Okay, now I'm here, let's close it, for example. So the problem that we have is we don't want other people coming in necessarily. Unfortunately, some people are like this. In Medina was the opposite, that Rasulullah allowed this community of Muhajirin and Ansar, even though Meccans behave differently than people of Medina, they have different culture possibly, but they became brothers. Aus and Khazraj tribes that were enemies with one another became brothers. So we will see the other similarities that Imam Mahdi will do something with as much even though we have difference of opinion, different ethnicities, different ways of thinking, but everyone at the end of the day will be a true brother, or sisters will be true sisters of one another. There will be this very attached and close community throughout the world. And that is the third similarity that Imam Mahdi has with Rasulullah. We ask Allah, inshallah, to make us of the true muntadhirin, inshallah, of the Imam. We ask Allah to, through Imam Mahdi, remove injustice, remove the suffering, especially that's happening in Gaza, and give protection to our brothers and sisters in Palestine. And inshallah, for us to be the true, sincere companions of the Imam of the age and to remember him, inshallah, this Sha'ban and this Shahr Ramadan with a